Thank you. The next item of business is a statement by Kate Forbes on Project Willow, unlocking Grangemouth's potential. The Deputy First Minister will take questions at the end of her statement, and so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on the Deputy First Minister up to 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Members will be aware that, despite the best efforts of the Government, Petro-Ineos took the decision to close the Grangemouth refinery this year. We remain disappointed by this decision, which will result in the loss of hundreds of highly skilled jobs at Grangemouth. And our thoughts remain with the workers, their families and the community at a difficult time. Last month marked an important milestone in Grangemouth's future with the publication of the Project Willow report, which sets out how the skills, expertise and facilities at Grangemouth can be used to achieve a just transition for the site. The study was jointly funded by the Scottish and UK governments, and the public information document sets out the study's findings and recommendations. It demonstrates that a transformative future for the existing site is achievable if the public and the private sectors work together in the coming months and years. The study has identified 9 projects which are viable alternatives to existing fossil-based operations. If brought to fruition, those projects could support 800 direct jobs at Grangemouth, as well as jobs across the supply chain. To achieve this transformation for the site, significant investment will be needed to bring these projects to life. Project Willow reports that up to £4.25 billion in capital investment will be required in a base case scenario. We acknowledge that the public sector has a role to play in leveraging private sector investment in these projects. And that's why the Scottish Government will establish a £25 million Grangemouth Just Transition Fund. The fund will seek to catalyse near-term opportunities arising from Project Willow and send a clear signal that we will work with businesses to make low-carbon projects at Grangemouth market investable. I welcome the UK Government's confirmation that £200 million has been ring-fenced within the National Wealth Fund to support the deployment of projects at Grangemouth. However, many of the proposals outlined in Project Willow are not yet market investable, which may preclude access to National Wealth Fund support. Therefore, I do call on UK ministers today to provide urgent clarity to confirm that these monies will be available for Grangemouth as soon as businesses need it. Project Willow cannot and will not become a report that merely sits on a shelf. It's a call to action for the public and private sectors to work together to harness the potential at Grangemouth, and I want to assure the Chamber that Project Willow is being progressed. The Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Net Zero and the UK Government Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero have instructed Scottish Enterprise and the UK Office for Investment to jointly establish an investment task force that will identify and attract investors to support the development of the proposals set out in Project Willow. That task force will report jointly to both Scottish and UK ministers on a 6-week basis to ensure that progress is being made that supports business, the workforce and community. I can confirm that initial interest has already been very strong, with both Scottish Enterprise and Petro-Ineos confirming that they've received numerous expressions of interest from interested parties. Whilst Project Willow considered the future of the existing refinery site, we're ambitious about the wider cluster's low-carbon and renewable prospects. As such, the task force will also seek to attract investment in proposals not identified under Project Willow, ensuring that prosperity is felt in all corners of the industrial cluster. What is coming through in my discussions with businesses is that there needs to be a radical shift in the policy and regulatory landscape if new projects are to be deployed at Grangemouth. That's reinforced by Project Willow, which makes a series of policy recommendations to Government, with the majority directed at UK ministers due to the reserved nature of these matters. Officials will work collaboratively with the UK Cabinet Office to ensure that each and every recommended policy change required at a UK level is given due consideration. We need UK ministers to take seriously the significant shift in existing policy that will be required to deploy longer-term technologies, such as biofuels refining in Scotland. And therefore, in this statement, I also call on the UK Government to take urgent action to ensure there is a viable route forward for the production of transition fuels like sustainable aviation fuel at Grangemouth. That includes legislating before the summer to allow for revenue mechanisms to be established. Furthermore, the much delayed and long-awaited decision on the Acorn project by the UK Government is essential for the future of the Grangemouth industrial cluster. The lack of clarity and commitment from the UK Government is and will continue to inhibit investment. And so I do call today on the UK Government to show that they are serious about supporting Grangemouth's transition and confirm Acorn now. As I've set out, we've already heard from businesses and potential investors with an interest in supporting new activities at Grangemouth. Now that Project Willow has been established, it's our commitment to engage and work with investors and a broad range of stakeholders to fully understand the changes they need to enable the deployment of low-carbon projects. Put plainly, we want to understand any and all barriers to investment and the steps that the Scottish Government can take to remove them. Our efforts to secure a sustainable, prosperous and fair future for Grangemouth don't end with Project Willow. It's vital that the benefits of transitioning Grangemouth are felt across the totality of industry here, as well as the workforce and indeed the wider community who have an intrinsic relationship to industry. Our Grangemouth Just Transition Plan, which has been developed in partnership with all of these stakeholders, will be published next month. This first-of-its-kind plan will outline both the strategic framework and vision for the future of the industrial cluster. It will inform the next steps of Project Willow, as well as wider activity focused on developing and growing the highly skilled workforce and support for the Grangemouth community. I'm grateful to all who have taken the time to consider our recent public consultation, ensuring that the final plan can best represent a broad range of views and ambitions. The First Minister recently made reference to the economic crisis facing the cluster, and we are taking decisive action. We are providing support to the workforce facing redundancy as a result of the refinery's closure. We are providing a comprehensive retraining offer delivered by Forth Valley College that is equipping workers with the skills to transition into in-demand industries right now. We're grateful to both the Forth Valley College and Unite, the union, for their dedication in ensuring we leave nobody behind. Further to this, we've been clear that the valuable input of trade unions must be central to any efforts to progress the vision set out in Project Willow. I am committed to ensuring that unions and the voice of the workforce continue to have strong representation as we take these next steps. Their skills and experience are critical to securing the future of Grangemouth. Presiding Officer, Grangemouth can and will remain at the forefront of industrial manufacturing in Scotland for years to come, provided it is supported throughout the next phase in its journey. The businesses and the workforce at Grangemouth represent decades of energy-intensive expertise that is ready to be harnessed as new technologies become more viable. Together, Project Willow and the Grangemouth Just Transition Plan are a blueprint for what is possible at Grangemouth. Now we've got to get on with the work to deliver it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister. Deputy First Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for questions, after which we'll move on to the next item of business. And I'd be grateful if members who wish to put a question were to press their request to speak buttons now. And I call on Douglas Lumsden.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you to the Deputy First Minister for advance sight of the statement today. Petroenios has confirmed that 405 workers have already been made redundant, with a further 105 to go in the next 18 months, and my thoughts go out to those workers and their families. Project Willow will not save those jobs. Project Willow may create, and I say may create, 800 jobs over a 15-year period, but only if 4.25 billion is invested. Those 405 workers cannot wait 15 years. What we are seeing at Grangemouth is what happens when you demonise an industry and create a hostile environment. The SNP's presumption against new oil and gas is driving investment away, and the lack of energy strategy is frankly an embarrassment. The workers of Grangemouth have been failed by this SNP government, who have failed to plan ahead for this eventuality and only sprung into action when it was too late. So can I ask the Deputy First Minister, what work is the Scottish Government doing with other heavy industrial sites across Scotland so we don't find ourselves in the same situation as we find ourselves here, and have transition plans ready before closures happen? And since the publication of this report, what discussions have taken place with the site owner Petroineos to ascertain if they have an appetite to invest in the projects listed in Willow, or if they are willing to sell the site to someone else who will?
Deputy First Minister.
Thanks. I appreciate it's great rhetoric for Douglas Lumsden to spin the line that it is somehow a very recent policy on oil and gas that is to blame, but that belies his ignorance of what has actually led to this position. And I think that the gravity of the situation at Grangemouth befits greater understanding of the factors that have led to it. In terms of the last question around engagement with the site owner, and appetite to invest, there has been extensive engagement with the site owner in terms of appetite to invest, and engagement with others who have indicated an interest in investing. The point of Project Willow is to set out the viable projects that could be progressed with. I said in my statement that we have had quite significant interest that has come to Petroineos and Scottish Enterprise. And there's also some near-term projects like, for example, recycling of plastics, ABE, biorefining, anaerobic digestion and fuel switching that could be delivered more quickly. So the overall figure that he gives, that's over a longer time frame, obviously doesn't indicate the fact that some of these are short, medium and long-term projects.
Thank you. Sarah Boyack.
Can I thank the Deputy First Minister for advance sight of her statement. It was great that we had the joint briefing from the Cabinet Secretary and the Energy Secretary when Project Willow was published last month, because the workers and the communities at Grangemouth urgently need investment. So does she agree that we need to see that joint work and cooperation between our governments continue? And it's great that the Deputy First Minister is promoting training at Falkirk College, but where are the jobs that those doing that training will be able to work for? And given the scale of green jobs that were promised over the last 17 years, don't we urgently need to know where those green jobs are? And given the urgency now at Grangemouth, where is the Scottish Government's Just Transition Plan? Because it was promised years ago. And when will the new investment task force report? And does the Deputy First Minister agree that the focus needs to be on what jobs and what industrial investment will be delivered so that Grangemouth continues to deliver energy security and jobs now and in the future, rather than being an import terminal?
Deputy First Minister.
Thanks. A lot of questions there, and similarly to Douglas Lumsden, there was a lot of questions that I probably didn't cover in full, so I'm very happy to follow up with both individuals to make sure that I've answered all of them. In terms of the joint working, that joint working must continue, because whilst there's been a lot of focus on the investment that is available, £25 million from the Scottish Government, £200 million ring-fenced, our understanding is that there are considerable policy changes that need to be made. And this is a matter that I have raised with the UK Government around the nature of those policy changes. So, for example, Project Willow's findings chime with Unite's view that a biorefinery capable of producing sustainable aviation fuel is feasible at Grangemouth. But there is work and investment required first, and that needs to happen before deployment can take place. So the policy landscape does need to be altered to ensure that sustainable aviation fuel production in Scotland is possible. And therefore, the work collaboratively with the UK Government is not just a nice to have, it's absolutely critical if we want to make progress on these points. In terms of when the Investment Task Force reports, I'm very happy to share a little bit more detail. Obviously, we are looking at the moment at sort of short, medium term. We will collate the expressions of interest, look for ways to progress those, and some of that work may evolve as we see the level of interest. So some of that may be confirmed later down the line. I'm afraid there was more questions. I just can't scribble them all fast enough, so I'll come back to her.
Thank you. I call Michael Matheson to be followed by Stephen Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I welcome the Deputy First Minister's statement here this afternoon. I think, as the DFM rightly recognised, that many of the projects which have been identified, potential projects that have been identified in Project Willow, will actually take significant time to be developed, some of which would not be developed until into the 2030s, and will also require a significant deployment of capital investment in order to realise their potential. Can I therefore take 2 points to make to the Deputy First Minister? The first is, what further immediate action can be taken in order to help to support not just the Grangemouth economy, but the wider Falkirk economy, which has been hit not just with the loss of jobs at the refinery, but also at Alexander Dennis's in recent months, and whether some of the £25 million that the Scottish Government have given for immediate action could be deployed more widely within the Falkirk Council area to help to support employment opportunities. And my second point is in relation to the task force, which is to be welcomed, and I acknowledge the work that they've taken forward to date. However, I do think in the medium to longer term we require a governance process for driving forward investment in Grangemouth, which will ensure that we get the type of capital deployed strategically and aligned with the long-term vision for the area in a way that I don't think the task force will be able to achieve. And therefore, is the Government open to looking at how the long-term governance arrangements could be for this investment in the medium to long term?
Deputy First Minister.
Great. Well, I counted 2 questions there, so that was easier to note down. So I thank Michael Matheson for that. In terms of the long-term and governance arrangements, I think that's absolutely a legitimate question, and I'll take that away and perhaps speak to the member in detail about what they think is most appropriate. He mentioned Alexander Dennis. I had the pleasure of meeting with Alexander Dennis just about a week ago as well, in recognition of the important role that they play. On the point around immediate action, it is well understood that Project Willow outlines the short to medium term, depending on which project it is, but that there is need right now. He'll know about the work that we've done in terms of targeted skills support. That work is underway. Training needs assessments are happening. Over 90% of those who have come forward now have had such an assessment completed. There is an enhanced package of support as part of the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal, and we are open to suggestions, most of which come through Falkirk Council, to ensure that those resources are targeted most effectively. In terms of the Grangemouth Just Transition Fund, that is focused again on the immediate term in terms of supporting businesses, the workforce and the community. So there is a sequencing thing here in terms of what funding is available immediately to deploy and support, and what is being used for that longer-term vision for the site.
Stephen Kerr, to be followed by Kevin Stewart.
I thought the Deputy First Minister was uncharacteristically vague when she was answering Douglas Lumsden's question earlier, so may I ask her to clarify this particular issue, because I think it's so important. The Willow report, as we know, was paid for by taxpayers' money, but it was actually commissioned by Petro Ineos. EY did that work for Petro Ineos. They reported to Petro Ineos. So Petro Ineos have known all along about these 9 potential projects. I might say that they've known longer than even Colin Mackay of STV has known about those 9 projects. So I would like to ask the Deputy First Minister to be not very vague about this, but very clear. Have Petro Ineos made it clear that they are committed to the development of their existing site? Because without the site, none of these projects will happen. So that's a very important question that Douglas Lumsden asked earlier, and I'm asking it again. And the second part of that is, have they made it clear that they are willing themselves to invest in any of those 9 potential projects, other than to create the import terminal?
Deputy First Minister.
My uncharacteristic answer may be because I uncharacteristically am speaking on behalf of a third party, and so there is an element of challenge in answering his questions directly. The member is absolutely right to say that, along with the UK Government, the Scottish Government grant-funded Petro Ineos to commission this work. They have acted as the lead partners, reflective of their role as owner and operator of the Grangemouth refinery. There was obviously an advisory board which met regularly throughout the reporting period and up to its conclusion, and they received drafts of Project Willow studies findings throughout that period and collectively agreed on the final outputs. In terms of the specific questions, Despite posing the question, Petro-Ineos has not made any firm commitment to invest in the technologies identified under Project Willow. We have worked with the business previously on progressing a biorefinery proposal at Grangemouth, but the shareholders have not taken the decision to continue with that project. And so in lieu of a commitment from the business, we are therefore engaging with all parties that are interested in progressing low-carbon projects at Grangemouth. But there's no doubt that Petro-Ineos continue to have a critical role in securing a future for the site. Whatever role that Petro-Ineos plays in the future, they have confirmed to us that they will act in good faith when engaging with businesses that are interested in deploying new projects on the existing site, which I welcome. So I hope that is more characteristically clear, despite being uncharacteristically on behalf of somebody else, hence the way I have answered it.
Thank you. Kevin Stewart, to be followed by Richard Leonard.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. During the election campaign, Labour pledged to save Grangemouth. They did not. The Labour Government also continues to deny resourcing for Acorn, Scotland's carbon capture and storage project, has failed to take the strides required to ramp up sustainable aviation fuel production, and no action has been taken to change hydrogen storage and transportation regulations, all of which could have benefited Grangemouth. What are Scottish ministers doing to get their UK Government Labour counterparts to get the finger out on these issues to save and create jobs?
Deputy First Minister.
So we urgently need the UK Government to give a positive decision on Acorn. We have said that for a number of years, but this is now heightened in light of the publication of Project Willow, which makes crystal clear that a decision on Acorn by the UK Government is required as part of determining the future of Grangemouth's long-term viability. And it is not fair on those behind the Acorn project to be waiting indefinitely for clarity. So I have raised this with the UK Government myself, and I call again on them, and I call on the Parliament to join forces in prioritising the Acorn carbon capture and storage project. But the member also asked about sustainable aviation fuel. That can be a critical component of the transition. We need the legislation to enable the regulatory changes and the necessary revenue certainty mechanism. There's also an opportunity for hydrogen here. Hydrogen can play a critical part of Grangemouth's transition. I know the member has a long-standing interest in hydrogen. We can lead the way in hydrogen production. Our Hydrogen Action Plan sets clearly the strategic ambitions. And I would also note that the Scottish Government is investing £5 million in Ineos O&P Select Phase Fuel Switching Programme as they seek to transition to hydrogen.
Richard Leonard, to be followed by Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I remind members of my voluntary register of trade union interests. Yesterday afternoon, Unite were in Parliament. They warned that if the Grangemouth refinery is not repurposed, if it closes this year, the infrastructure will run down or disappear altogether, the workers will go, and Project Willow, in their words, will be nothing more than a paper exercise. So, Deputy First Minister, what action are you taking, even at this late stage, to prevent the refinery from closing down? Will you push Petro-Ineos to cooperate with an urgent review of the assets at the refinery to see if they can be converted to produce sustainable aviation fuel and at what cost? And how many, not who, but how many interested parties have now approached Scottish Enterprise about investing in the future of the Grangemouth site?
Deputy First Minister.
I thank the member for another series of questions, some of which I may not have scribbled down. So on the first point around the infrastructure, I think Unite make an excellent point, which we have seen previously, that where there is too long a gap between one purpose, as it were, in a site, transitioning to another purpose, then there are additional costs. I think that's why getting Project Willow published now to give us an indication of where we might go is so important. And it's an issue that we take seriously. The member will know that we have ensured that Unite the Union have been well integrated into Project Willow via regular standing committee meetings and so on. So we're happy to continue to engage with them. But he makes a point which is about how do we avoid that from happening. And my view is we avoid that from happening to identify the investable propositions as quickly as possible, securing the regulatory changes where that's required, putting the money in and enabling new work to begin at the site as quickly as possible. I think it's possible, but it does require very clear prioritisation and focus. He asked how many are interested. I'm afraid I don't have figures in front of me, but a report from SE and Ineos indicates that it's above expectations. There's more interest than they were anticipating. I myself have been engaging with a number of investors who have expressed interest, and it's then about taking that interest into specific proposals. He asked another question about sustainable aviation fuel. I wrote it down. I don't quite recall what it is, so I'll come and find him afterwards.
Thank you. I call Audrey Nicholl to be followed by Gillian Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And as touched on in previous questions and responses, one of the key pathways highlighted in the report was the transformation of Grangemouth into a producer of sustainable aviation fuel, an option that the Scottish Government has long called on the UK Government to appropriately regulate for. Does the Cabinet Secretary share my concern that the UK Labour Government has so far concentrated on aviation fuel developments south of the border, when in fact Grangemouth is poised to lead this industry, and bearing in mind the Cabinet Secretary's important point about the need for a radical shift in policy and regulatory landscape, what engagement has the Scottish Government had with the UK Government on the urgent need for regulatory changes to enable this?
Deputy First Minister.
So we know that the UK Government has made £50 million available to Teesside to develop various projects on SAF. We need at least similar support for Grangemouth and also for the UK Government to swiftly introduce its planned Sustainable Aviation Fuel Revenue Support Mechanism bill. The £200 million that has been ring-fenced in the National Wealth Fund is really welcome, but it does operate in a different way to just being able to provide that funding up front. So I take the member's point in terms of the opportunity here. We know the steps that need to be taken, and we are willing, all parties, to take them.
Thank you. In the remaining 1.5 minutes we have for this item, we have 5 members wishing to put questions. So I'd be grateful if we can all bear that in mind when it comes to putting multiple questions, and also, yes, if we can all be concise, that'd be very helpful. So I call Gillian Mackay to be followed by Willie Rennie.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. The changes that could be made to Grangemouth in the next few years are sizable. The community has lived beside an oil refinery for the last 100 years, and its sights, sounds and often smells are very well known. The options in Project Willow, as well as the decommissioning of the refinery, leave the community with uncertainty as to what living in Grangemouth and the surrounding area will be like in years to come. How will the Scottish Government ensure that the community is well engaged and informed as to what changes they are likely to see? And what will the Government do to make sure that the community does not see a detrimental impact on their lives?
Deputy First Minister.
The member is right about highlighting the impact on the community. It's always worth saying that there are a number of really exciting businesses with high growth potential already active in Grangemouth, Celtic Renewables being one of the most exciting there. So taking the community with us, informing them as much as possible and keeping in touch with local representatives, I think is the way to do it.
Thank you. I call Willie Rennie to be followed by Emma Roddick.
It is more positive that Ministerial have said they'll act in good faith. That's positive. But what it is that they require from governments, both UK and Scotland, to give a greater commitment to the site so that we can seek the opportunities that are obviously there for a well-serviced, well-located site?
In terms of the opportunities for us, it's about having highlighted now what the biggest opportunities are, converting that level of interest I expressed that's come to SE into genuine propositions that can be co-invested in. So Project Willow suggests that it will take £4.25 billion. Clearly, some of that will have to come from the private sector. So it's a co-investment approach, and we're keen to do that. Our funding is available. We anticipate the £200 million being available. And it's as simple as responding to that interest with investable propositions that all parties can back and take forward and get those established as quickly as possible.
Emma Roddick, to be followed by Graham Simpson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's essential that the workforce and the local community have a voice in this process and a say in the support that is made available to them. We cannot stand by and lose another pillar of Scottish industry thanks to a lack of action from Westminster, and urgent action is needed to retain the skills of Grangemouth's highly skilled workforce. Can the Deputy First Minister say any more about the Scottish Government's latest engagement with workers and trade unions at Grangemouth?
Deputy First Minister.
We engage very regularly with trade unions. In fact, the First Minister met with them on the day that Project Willow was launched. We recognise the critical role that they play, and we continue to engage regularly with workforce representatives, and hugely grateful for their candour as we navigate this period of change.
Graham Simpson, to be followed by Ben McPherson.
Thank you. I've long been an advocate for the potential for Grangemouth to produce sustainable aviation fuel. It's been mentioned already. The Deputy First Minister spoke about potential legislation before the summer. Is that a wish of hers, or has she been told that there will be such legislation?
Deputy First Minister.
I'm afraid I'm not able to confirm what legislation the UK Government will most definitely bring forward, but that's what we believe needs to be the timetable in order to achieve our wider ambitions.
Ben McPherson.
Rightly, there's been much focus today on the importance of the local economy and Grangemouth's significance with regard to the national economy. But if the recommendations are taken forward and when they are progressed, what will the positive benefits be for the regional economy of the Firth of Forth, which of course includes the Port of Leith?
Deputy First Minister.
There could be significant opportunities. I guess on a day like today, we're all very conscious of the geopolitical international risks that we face, and therefore backing our own industries and creating jobs within Scotland become even more important. And businesses based at Grangemouth do significantly contribute to Scotland's economy and to the wider region. So I see huge opportunity for the whole of Scotland, including the Port of Leith.
Thank you. That concludes the ministerial statement on Project Willow. I'll allow a moment or two for front benches to organise.